Hello everyone and welcome. I'd like to thank you all so much for joining this special webinar today. PanTerra is an industry leader in unified cloud communications, and our topic for today's webinar is Rethinking Organizational Communications Post-2020. 2020 has required a decentralized office communications environment. And the questions are you facing difficulties because of the ever-changing environment of organizational communication? Are you perhaps curious to know the situation of organizational communication post-2020? Perhaps you're trying to find the most effective way to conduct your business communication today. Well, over the next 20 minutes or so, you will get a crystal clear idea about the changing environment of business communication since its beginning until today. In this special webinar, we'll be sharing 3 phases of the changing nature of organizational communication, which will hopefully help you to get a better understanding of where you are today and where you may want to be in the near future. Also, we'll share some data-oriented guidance to assist you in adapting to the ever-changing nature of business communications. And at the end of this webinar, we hope that you have some clarity in the right choice for your business's organizational communication. After the 20 minutes, we also hope that you'll have a different perspective on what your company needs in its communication stack. If you do find this webinar helpful, we encourage you to please reshare this with your peers that may be facing the same challenges that we will be discussing during the course of this webinar today. Information communication technology has immense significance. According to research by the consultancy IDC, the global information technology industry is on track to reach a value of $5.2 trillion in 2021. The United States is the largest technology market globally, currently representing 32% of that total, or approximately $1.7 trillion for 2021. It may surprise you that most organizations are still using communication technology from a century ago. They're using technologies that are outdated, they're difficult to use, they're less effective, and not compatible with today's world. And 2020 has revealed the weaknesses, oh yes, of those old technologies. The time for change was yesterday. The history of centralized work efficiency used to require everyone working in close proximity to one another, right? The Industrial Revolution was the transition to new manufacturing processes in Europe and the United States in the period from between 1760 to 1820 and 1840. The development of trade and the rise of business were among the major causes of the Industrial Revolution. Since then, the work process has changed dramatically. International businesses give us the paperwork process. And you can see the historical picture of the old Admiralty office in London in 1792. After that, in the early 1900s, Frederick Winslow Taylor brought simplicity and effectiveness to the workplace. Workplace for the first time got expanded during that period. And the revolution was quite fast, and as you can see in 1916, increasing land costs and cheap steel made skyscrapers the next workplace evolution. The workplace started to become more personalized. You can see here from 1960 to 1980, open offices to cubicles, which were thought to boost privacy and freedom. The workplace got more and more centralized since then, and organizations realized the importance of a centralized work process. Work has become more and more complex over time, and it was necessary to be gathered all into one place. But is it still necessary? Is it still most efficient? 2020 revealed the liabilities in this model. The COVID-19 pandemic happened. The world got stuck at home and organizations had to centralize their work processes to create the work opportunity from anywhere. So since the Industrial Revolution, the process of centralized workplace got expanded dramatically. Now let's rethink the centralized offices. So rethinking centralized offices. A centralized office gives management the ability to save money, encourage greater communication, and improve the efficiency of operations across the board. Centralized offices help to deal with the growing complexity of the business. It allowed greater efficiency for workers and businesses. It's enabled oversight, communication, collaboration, and saved businesses money. Now we're in the knowledge economy, or the information age. We don't hammer widgets anymore, but we still gather together as if we do. Centralized offices made us rethink after the COVID-19 pandemic. The organization thought of the centralized offices differently. Also working from home, employees are 20 to 25% more productive than those commuting to work. A study by the global staffing firm Robert Half found that 34% of professionals working from home would rather quit their job and find another one with flexible remote work policies and return to the office full-time. 34%. The centralized office has the upsides and the downsides that only once were wished or hated by the organizations. Those things no longer rely on proximity. We need to rethink the centralized office model today. Now let's move on to the 3 phases. Phase 1 is becoming analog to digital. From the early 1800s, the communication process started to change from entirely analog. In 1878, the telephone was the first analog electronic communication device, allowing the human voice to be transmitted in analog form across long distances. Only one signal was allowed at one time. Then the PBX era came to us. PBX is acronym for Private Branch Exchange, which consists of different hardware components that work in tandem to provide connectivity to the telephone network for an organization's internal communication. The first manual switchboards had actually been in use just a few years after the invention of the telephone by Alexander Graham Bell in 1878. By the turn of the century, being a switchboard operator for a public telephone company was a popular job for young women looking to enter the workforce. The phone companies were more than willing to hire polite women, provided great customer service, and were employable at 50 to 75% of a man's wage. So by recognizing the importance of PBX in that period, the world started to focus on developing it. Many stages of the PBX came to us since then, and that was the revolution from analog to digital. So let's see what the analog phone system is all about. Analog phone systems consist of traditional landlines installed by the local phone company. It's also known as, plain old telephone service. Analog phones function in the same way they did more than a century ago. Sound is transmitted using electrical pulses on a wire. These wires connect to the phone service provider. As you can see here, analog relies on copper wire circuitry, point to point of one number for one line. And there are sub-usage of analog phone systems, like it doesn't need a lot of lines or business functionality. It's reliable, but very limited, especially because of today's modern hackers. Strictly voice in most cases, and it's widely available. Analog still might work for some small businesses, and they use it. But they can have a better option within seconds if they want, by choosing digitalization. You can see in the picture the analog system installed by traditional telephone companies like Bell. Now, the Bell Telephone Company, a common law joint stock company, was organized in Boston, Massachusetts on July the 9th, 1877. And you can see the enormous revenue of Bell in that period. $370 billion was Bell Systems' net worth in today's dollars at the time of their antitrust breakup in 1983. And it was the start of the end of centralized communication. In a centralized system, the foremost authority or administrator retains total control over all aspects of the network. This authority is typically exerted through a central server that manages all data and permissions. A centralized network also locates all significant processing power in this primary server. Since all key network functions are managed through a central location, IT personnel can keep those servers up to date in hardware upgrades and software patches. Centralized architecture also makes it easier to provide a consistent user experience because the network environment is stable and predictable. But the centralized networks are not very fault tolerant. All data must pass through a single location, so if that central server goes down for any reason, it'll likely take the entire system down with it. Now, this makes centralized architecture a tempting target for cyber attacks because a breach could potentially compromise all of the data and all the applications that are stored there. So let's see some drawbacks of the analog system. Well, it literally has no features. Very limited expansion opportunity. It's expensive to upgrade or scale, and it requires professional rewiring to make changes. In some ways, you can limit your business capabilities that much, but to compete with other organizations with today's technology, well, you need to do much, much better than that. Modern businesses need more from their phone systems, much more. Let's go jump into the next phase. Phase 2. Phase 2 is a cloud-based system. Until the 1960s, most businesses were dependent on the public telephone company to connect their inter-office calls, calling the switchboard PBX stage. Then the automatic PBX of electromechanical switching, electronic switching, time division multiplexing system was introduced. And after that, well, by the time 1990 rolled around, the internet, as we now know it, was still in its infancy. In 1997, that first IP PBX service became available. In a few years, this new technology would be offered with VoIP, also known as the Voice over Internet Protocol, to provide multimedia transmission while reducing data usage. Since IP technology did not require the vast hardware that most companies had already invested in, owners were wary of jumping onto the IP PBX train. All of the equipment they had spent time and money on to maintain and upgrade would be absolutely worthless. So for those who wanted the best of both worlds, the hybrid PBX was introduced. As you can see here, after the 1990s, the VoIP on-premise era started, which had some downsides like high upfront costs, must be maintained by in-house IT staff or consultants, no guaranteed reliability, no support for remote employees either. Then the SIP was introduced, which also has some downsides. For example, it requires internet bandwidth, ideally business fiber internet, to support the quality of service. Needs sufficient network information like firewalls, to prevent cybercrime risks. The quality and extensibility of services offered by hosted VoIP vendors can significantly vary as well. And after that, the hosted PBX was introduced with pros and cons, like it tends to be cheaper initially, as choosing an on-premise PBX phone system requires purchasing hardware. The responsibility of running the PBX is down to the third party. You only need to purchase IP phones for hosted PBX, so the initial outlay is minimal. There are no maintenance costs, as this is all done remotely, which includes any upgrades. New features can be added with any additional cost, as and when required. No need to worry about any network issues either. So VoIP, a major leap. The software replaces hardware. Packet switching network converts analog to digital. Hosted service, an era of the communication revolution. You can see some use cases for VoIP. Larger businesses, multiple departments, all locations. Repurposing human resources. Scalable, no copper wire. Productivity and multitasking capabilities. Flexibility, fewer hardware requirements, and more. It was a considerable change in the industry. By 2003, 25% of all voice calls were VoIP or SIP through an on-premise PBX. In a rush to establish and configure VoIP services, everyone forgot to consider the needs of law enforcement and wiretapping regulations. Well-defined laws and processes give law enforcement access to traditional telephone traffic, and they need it now more than ever. due to their increasing role in handling terrorist threats. The fact that an increasing percentage of telecommunication traffic is going over a completely different technology throws uncertainty over the processes used. So let's see some VoIP benefits and drawbacks now. You can see some benefits of VoIP are reliability. Redundant data centers make this more reliable than analog ones. Also, VoIP is cheaper. And the drawbacks of VoIP are that it's reliant on bandwidth and vulnerable to internet outages. Though the VoIP has some drawbacks, it was the first step towards the revolution. VoIP made us realize that the communication process can be much more than we thought. Organizations are getting good results through VoIP. However, all of them aren't capable of utilizing it the proper way. The fact is, still so many organizations are still in phase 1. So now, why are so many still in phase 1? Well, legacy systems and hardware are holding them back. SIP or on-site PBX uses an established network and offers scalability and features of VoIP. Virtual or hosted PBXs, more features and business system integrations like CRMs, texts, surveys, auto-attendant, queuing, recording, and forwarding. Only the process of upgrading is holding so many organizations in phase 1. They just need to rethink and take the step today. So, what is the core difference between the traditional on-site PBX and cloud IP phone system? Well, it's quite simple. It's more in the cloud and less on-premise. More in the cloud means more business functionality can be delivered. Organizations can and should upgrade to the cloud IP system by choosing to take the step today. The upsides are powerful calling features, including flexibility to work remotely, superior reliability and uptime, encrypted communications, and lower startup and ongoing costs. Also, it helps organizations to have improved team communication, enhanced customer experiences, increased team performance, excellent call quality, and reliability. However, phase 3 is the go-to way for today's world. Phase 3 is UCaaS, Unified Communications as a Service. UCaaS is a cloud-delivered unified communications model that supports 6 communications functions like enterprise telephony, meetings, audio, video, web conferencing, unified messaging, instant messaging, and presence, personal and team, mobility, and communications-enabled business processes. The business today is all in the cloud. As you can see, after 2000, the full business communication platforms just exploded. And it has got a long way to go. For some small businesses whose employees do very little remote work and digital collaboration, VoIP may be the right choice to access cost savings, mobility, and reliability, high-quality business communication. But for most organizations who need to create a strong groundwork, foundation for multi-site collaboration, employee mobility, and rapid technological change, there's no question that UCaaS is the way to go. 2020 has shown us that businesses still need much more from their communication systems. The urgency, which can't put off telecom progress any longer, and work still has to happen despite the turmoil. Also, 2020 has shown us that prepared businesses are weathering far better, and they capitalized on focusing on delivering value and not just staying alive. As Warren Buffett said, you only find out who's swimming naked when the tide goes out. COVID made us realize that we need to overcome past mistakes and be prepared for the future. Hopefully, we'll be able to get the COVID-free world soon. However, the effect of COVID-19, the pandemic, will remain a long time. COVID-19 is going to change the traditional work systems permanently. Remote is here to stay. It's going to be necessary to compete in every way now, especially related to talent recruitment. According to a Gartner HR lesson from COVID-19's webinar poll, 90% will allow employees to work remotely even after COVID vaccines become widely adopted. How's that for thought? Many businesses have piecemealed their solutions together, or even built their own. But in the process of solving those solutions, businesses created one major problem: complexity, and many others. They use many technologies, services, software, which turned into a massive, time-consuming, expensive, difficult-to-manage process. As all the business persons or members of an organization aren't tech-savvy, it demotivates them to produce the most out of their work, which negatively impacts the company's bottom line. And businesses that need more than video and voice, they need collaboration, fewer tools. Business analytics needs a better solution. And that's what businesses need today. But let me inform you that UCaaS provides piecemeal too. Yes. Do you know who you're dealing with? UCaaS industry and competition are ramping up. Lots of smoke and mirrors, lots of liability. According to one survey, 52% of mid-sized enterprises currently use a UCaaS solution, while 56% consider moving to UCaaS. Major brands in the UCaaS industry have some huge allegations on their names. They're not the optimal experience for the users, significantly less customizable. The relationships might or might not be sustainable. Let's hope for the best, yeah? But if things do go wrong with those service providers, all the data, the information, the reputation, or even the entire business is at stake. It can be turned into an absolute disaster. So a proper solution is required today. And that's why we've introduced the Streams, an all-in-one, feature-rich, end-to-end cloud communications, collaborations, and file sharing suite that increases performance throughout your organization. Streams is the only service platform and technology combining unified communications, collaboration, and content sharing. It's HIPAA compliant since day one. Deployment is the beginning, not the end of the engagement. There's a 30-second live support time. And this goes for providers too. Actual live support, not a bot. These are the types of problems we wanted to solve with the Streams platform. We built it from the ground up versus bolting on along the way. We iterate based on customer requests. We can customize more to suit the situation since we own the tech. And you can try, should I say, the free limited version of Streams, the business class, unified cloud solution for communications, team messaging, and file sync and share today. It gives you the opportunity to truly centralize work from anywhere. So step up into the truly unified communications. Is there any other reason to gather in centralized offices anymore? For a considerable percentage of the workforce, probably not. Remote is here and it's here to stay. 2020 has caused everyone to rethink whether or not we're still doing things the most efficient way. We need to rethink the workplace now. Work is changing. Do you have the ability to adapt and stay competitive? We've got the tools and the technology to help you do that. It's time to use them. Try us today. These are the sources for you to find more about the topic. And thanks so much for being with us today. It was a fantastic experience to share this session with you. We are PanTerra Networks, that unified communications, team messaging, file sync and share, and business analytics from the only all-in-one customizable, HIPAA, high-tech, secure communications cloud solution. PanTerra leads the all-in-one communications cloud industry. You can find us at 1737 North First Street, STE 230, San Jose, California 95112. For any queries, please call us on 800-805-0558, or you can email us info@panterranetworks.com. So rethink the organizational communication today and rearrange your business process the right way today by getting a quote or a demo. Try Streams, the only service platform and technology combining unified communications, collaboration, and content sharing today. It's It's been such a pleasure talking with all of you. Thank you so much. Best wishes. Bye-bye.